Smoke rises thick from the blazing fire pit right in front of you, yet somehow you are breathing crisp, clean air without coughing. Outside, a brutal ice age blizzard is howling across the frozen tundra, yet inside this tiny animal hide tent, it feels like a warm, modern living room. For 99% of human history, bringing a live fire into a completely enclosed space was not an automatic death sentence. It was a masterclass in survival physics. Today, a poorly vented indoor heater or a running generator can silently kill you with carbon monoxide in just a matter of hours. But your ancient ancestors managed to survive thousands of freezing, unforgiving nights using an ingenious ventilation secret that modern society has almost entirely forgotten. To understand this paradox, you must look back to the Pleistocene epoch, an era where winter was not just a season but a constant lethal threat. You are standing in a vast, snow-covered wasteland. The temperature drops so fast that your heavy modern winter coat would fail you in under an hour. Without a reliable source of external heat, your body temperature plummets. Your core tries to compensate by violently shivering, rapidly burning through your precious calories. You absolutely need a fire. The anthropologist Richard Wrangham famously argued that controlling fire and cooking is exactly what made us uniquely human in the first place. But a fire out in the open is entirely useless when a raging ice age blizzard can extinguish your flames and freeze your bones simultaneously. You need a shelter. You need thick walls to block the piercing wind and a sturdy roof to trap the radiating heat close to your fragile skin. This creates the ultimate prehistoric trap. The exact moment you enclose that life-saving fire inside a small airtight tent, you trap the deadly smoke right along with it. Carbon monoxide is an invisible, odorless assassin. It binds to the hemoglobin in your blood much faster than oxygen, slowly shutting down your brain function. If you simply build a sealed dome of animal skins and light a campfire inside, you will fall peacefully asleep and never wake up again. Yet archaeological sites across the globe show massive ash deposits directly inside ancient human dwellings. So, how did they cheat death every single night? The answer lies in the architecture. To understand their secret, we first need to shatter a massive illusion. When you picture ancient humans, you almost certainly imagine the classic caveman. You picture a hunched figure sitting deep in a dark, rocky cavern, dragging a heavy wooden club. Pop culture has permanently etched this into your brain. But in reality, deep caves were terrible places to live. They were freezing, incredibly damp, and often completely pitch black just a few meters inside. Worse, if you wandered into a cave, you usually had to fight a massive prehistoric cave bear or a hungry pack of hyenas for the lease. For the vast majority of human evolution, your ancestors were actually brilliant nomadic architects, constantly moving across the incredibly harsh, wide-open landscape. They had to endlessly follow the massive migrating herds of megafauna, like woolly mammoths and reindeer, just to secure their next vital meal. Because you cannot pack up and carry a cave with you, your ancestors had to build temporary, highly engineered surface shelters from scratch. Archaeological sites across Eastern Europe reveal some of the most insane ancient homes, like massive huts built entirely out of interlocking mammoth bones, can verify. They used giant tusks as the main structural pillars and draped heavy, thick animal hides over the top to block the freezing winds. Other tribes constructed simple but incredibly sturdy dome tents using wooden poles, wrapping them tightly in layers of scraped leather and insulating moss. These temporary homes were deliberately built very small and compact. This was a survival tactic to trap as much radiating body heat as possible. However, this brilliant thermal design brings your ancestors right back to the original, incredibly deadly problem we just talked about a moment ago. To survive the Ice Age blizzards, these thick animal hide tents had to be practically airtight, sealing you off completely from the chaotic outside world. Therefore, the exact moment you strike a spark and ignite that absolute necessity of a campfire right in the center of your floor, the toxic smoke and carbon monoxide immediately begin filling up your tiny space. If the smoke cannot escape, you will not survive the night. Why didn't your ancestors simply tough out the cold without a fire to avoid the smoke? The answer lies deeply embedded in your own biology. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham famously argues that fire did not just keep us warm. His catching fire hypothesis states that cooking food actually created the modern human. Before fire, early hominins spent up to 6 hours every single day just chewing tough raw roots and raw meat to extract enough basic calories. Raw food is extremely difficult to digest. Your body burns a massive amount of its own energy just trying to break down those unbroken cellular walls. When your ancestors dropped a piece of tough meat into the flames, a chemical miracle happened. Heat acts as a prehistoric external stomach. Cooking physically breaks down complex proteins and carbohydrates before the food ever reaches your mouth. It instantly unlocks a massive treasure chest of hidden calories. Because digestion became so much easier outside the body, your ancestors' digestive tract physically shrank over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. This evolutionary shortcut freed up an enormous amount of biological energy. And that surplus energy was urgently redirected to one specific, incredibly greedy organ, your brain. Despite making up only 2% of your total body weight, your brain greedily consumes a staggering 20% of your daily calories. Without the massive calorie boost provided by cooked food, a brain of your size and power would be biologically impossible to sustain. But this incredible evolutionary leap came with a terrifying catch. By adapting to cooked food and controlled heat, we lost our thick, protective body fur. Humanity became biologically addicted to fire. It was no longer just a convenient tool. It became a strict physiological requirement for our bare-skinned survival. When the lethal sub-zero temperatures of the Ice Age rolled in, your ancestors could not simply abandon their flames just to avoid the smoke. Abandoning the fire meant freezing to death almost immediately, or slowly starving from an absolute inability to extract enough calories from frozen raw food. They were utterly forced to bring this smoky, dangerous element inside their tiny sealed hide tents. And to survive that, they had to invent thermodynamics. To see exactly how they survived this trap, picture yourself sitting inside a typical Paleolithic dome tent. Look very closely at the walls surrounding you. Begins with a sturdy framework of flexible wooden poles, or sometimes even curved mammoth ribs, driven deeply into the frozen earth. Over this skeleton, your ancestors meticulously draped dozens of heavy, overlapping animal hides, securing them tightly against the brutal Ice Age winds. They didn't stop there. To prevent any precious heat from escaping, they packed the outer edges and gaps with thick mud, moss, and snow. This deliberate construction created a highly efficient microclimate. The outside temperature in the tundra could easily drop to a lethal -20 degrees Celsius. But inside this enclosed space, the combined radiating body heat of your tribe and one tiny fire kept everything surprisingly warm and comfortable. However, we still face the invisible assassin. A completely sealed, insulated tent containing a live fire would still suffocate everyone within a few hours. This is exactly where prehistoric engineering becomes absolute genius. They never completely sealed the roof. They intentionally left a small gap at the top. This tiny opening at the apex was not a construction mistake. It was a carefully calculated, life-saving exhaust vent for the toxic smoke. Simultaneously, down at the very bottom edge of the hide walls, near the dirt floor, they deliberately left another tiny, unsealed gap. This lower gap was designed to allow a very small, controlled stream of freezing, oxygen-rich outside air to be pulled directly into the shelter. They invite the freezing cold inside. Because your ancient ancestors intuitively mastered the fundamental laws of thermodynamics long before science existed, they understood a basic rule: hot air expands. The blazing heat from the campfire makes the surrounding air lighter, forcing it to rise rapidly. As this incredibly hot, toxic, and smoke-filled air forcefully escapes through the top ceiling vent, it creates a powerful low-pressure vacuum inside the entire tent. This pressure vacuum physically sucks the fresh, cold oxygen through the bottom gap, continuously feeding both the campfire and your lungs. It is a perfect cycle. With the convection engine running smoothly, the toxic smoke is no longer a threat. But your long, freezing night has only just begun. Outside your thin, animal hide walls, the Ice Age tundra is completely pitch black. And the apex predators of the Pleistocene are finally waking up. The absolute only barrier standing between your soft body and a pack of massive prehistoric cave hyenas is the glowing light of your tiny campfire. However, maintaining a very small, perfectly controlled fire inside a tiny enclosed tent presents a new, highly dangerous logistical problem. A small fire burns through its limited fuel supply incredibly fast. You simply cannot afford to close your eyes for a solid 8 hours. If your entire tribe falls into a deep, modern-style sleep, the fire dies. The freezing cold rushes in, and the predators immediately follow. To survive this constant threat, your ancestors utilized a fascinating biological adaptation that modern society has completely erased. It is called segmented sleep. Historian Roger Ekirch found extensive evidence that long before artificial lighting, humans naturally divided their nights into two distinct chunks of rest. You would experience a first sleep for a few hours, naturally wake up in the middle of the night, and then have a second sleep. During this vital waking period, you wouldn't just lie there staring at the ceiling. You would sit up, stoke the embers, and add fresh wood. You would carefully clear away any snow blocking the bottom ventilation gap, ensuring that your life-saving convection engine kept running perfectly. Today, waking up at 2 in the morning is aggressively diagnosed as insomnia. But for hundreds of thousands of years, it was a survival mechanism. Anthropologists call this the sentinel hypothesis. Because individual sleep cycles within a tribe naturally staggered, someone was almost always awake and alert. While the rest of the tribe rested, one quiet watcher would guard the fragile flames, listening closely to the howling wind and the shadows outside. Prehistoric night was never a time of peaceful, uninterrupted rest. It was an active, highly coordinated defense against the deadly freezing dark. But this precarious nighttime routine did something far more profound than just keeping your ancestors alive. It fundamentally rewired human psychology forever. Anthropologist Polly Weissner spent years studying modern hunter-gatherer tribes, and she discovered a fascinating divide in human behavior strictly based on the light. During the harsh light of day, tribal conversations are almost entirely practical. They focus strictly on economic survival, hunting strategies, or complaining about work. But the exact moment the sun sets and the tribe gathers around that glowing campfire, the nature of human conversation shifts completely. At night, 80% of campfire talk becomes dedicated to storytelling. This small circle of light is exactly where human culture and myths were born. As you stare deeply into the dancing orange flames, the fire acts as a hypnotic anchor, naturally lowering your blood pressure and soothing your anxiety. This shared, intimate space allowed our brains to handle complex social networks. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar famously defined this limit at about 150 relationships. The prehistoric campfire was our original social media. It built the deep empathy and absolute cooperation required to survive the freezing, predator-filled world. Looking at the sleeping faces around you, you realize the tense convection engine wasn't just circulating oxygen. It was circulating the vital bonds of community. When dawn finally breaks, your tribe will rapidly dismantle the hide tent, leaving absolutely nothing behind except a small, quiet circle of gray ash. You carry your entire home on your back. For early nomadic foragers, carrying heavy possessions was a death sentence. True wealth meant moving lightly. Anthropologist Marshall Solins famously called this the original affluent society. By desiring almost nothing, your nomadic ancestors possessed an incredible amount of leisure time. However, that absolute freedom during the bright day came at a steep price. Every single night you were permanently tethered to that fragile flame. The fire goes out, the freezing ice age claims you. If the ventilation gap fails, your perfectly insulated tent silently becomes a gas chamber. Today, modern engineering has completely eliminated the immediate threat of smoke and freezing predators. But in doing so, we accidentally built a completely different kind of trap. You are completely safe inside a modern concrete apartment. There are no drafts, no freezing winds, and absolutely no cave hyenas waiting outside. You press a button and a digital heater warms the room perfectly without a single trace of smoke. It feels like the ultimate victory, but evolutionary biologists call this an evolutionary mismatch. Your ancient body is suddenly trapped in a hyper-modern environment it was never designed to understand. By sealing our modern buildings so tightly to save energy, we have entirely stopped the natural convection cycle that kept our ancestors breathing fresh oxygen. Today, you spend 90% of your life indoors, constantly rebreathing stagnant, recycled air heavily loaded with carbon dioxide and artificial synthetic chemicals. However, the most dangerous mismatch is not physical at all. It is deeply psychological. Just look closely at your isolated modern bedroom tonight. You are perfectly protected behind heavy locked doors. Yet for a prehistoric brain, sleeping completely alone away from the tribe triggers a massive panic response. Your primitive brain interprets total physical isolation as a deadly vulnerability. To your ancient DNA, being alone in the dark means you are about to die. Instead of gathering around a warm, relaxing orange campfire, you lie awake staring alone into the harsh, cold blue light of a modern smartphone. That artificial blue light severely suppresses your natural melatonin production, completely destroying the natural segmented sleep cycle your ancestors perfected over hundreds of thousands of years. When you inevitably wake up at 3 in the morning, your prehistoric biology fully expects you to simply stoke the fire and talk to a friend. Instead, you stare at the dark ceiling, completely alone, feeling a crushing wave of modern anxiety. You are safe, but your biology feels terrified. You have successfully traded the vital, noisy, life-saving warmth of the ancient tribe for the absolute quiet safety of an impenetrable concrete box. We built walls thick enough to completely keep the freezing ice age out, but we accidentally locked all of our deepest prehistoric anxieties inside with us. So the next time you feel an overwhelming, unexplainable urge to go camping or to just stare silently into a fire, realize something important. You yearn for the crackling flames and the open night sky because that exact environment is hardwired into your deepest evolutionary DNA. Modern society engineered the perfect, completely sealed concrete boxes to protect you from the brutal elements, eliminating the smoke and freezing wind entirely. Doing so, modern life also completely destroyed the brilliant, life-saving convection engine that kept your ancient ancestors breathing crisp, fresh oxygen. Society eradicated the terrifying cave hyenas and the massive cave bears, allowing you to finally sleep alone behind heavily locked, impenetrable doors. Yet this stripped away the vital comfort of the tribe, leaving your primitive brain constantly searching for a nighttime sentinel that no longer exists. This is the ultimate paradox of modern human progress. You have gained absolute physical safety, but you sacrificed your most fundamental biological harmony. Truly thrive in this modern world, you must consciously find ways to occasionally recreate that ancient, life-sustaining environment for your anxious mind. Sometimes you just need to forcefully open a window to let the freezing air rush in, breaking the sterile loop of stagnant artificial airflow. You need to gather your small tribe of trusted friends, put the digital screens away, and simply share stories late into the quiet night. By occasionally feeding these ancient biological instincts, you signal to your prehistoric brain that you are finally safe, warm, and surrounded by your community. Because deep down beneath your modern clothes, you are still that exact same resilient survivor from the frozen, unforgiving Pleistocene epoch. Close your eyes and imagine the biting cold fading away as you step back into that tiny, perfectly engineered dome of animal hides. Outside, a brutal ice age blizzard is howling across the frozen tundra, yet inside this tiny tent, it feels like a warm living room. Smoke rises thick from the blazing fire pit right in front of you, yet somehow you are breathing crisp, clean air without coughing. For 99% of human history, bringing fire indoors was not a death sentence. It was the absolute masterclass in physics that made you human.